Even though Pokemon games aren't really designed to be that deep on the lore side of things, they can occasionally introduce stuff that is extremely mysterious with absolutely no explanation whatsoever, leaving us fans to only guess as to what their purpose is, and what they could mean for the lore of Pokemon as a whole. And in this video, I am going to be covering some mysterious stuff like this that has appeared in Pokemon games that has never been explained. The first one that I wanted to bring up is an interesting one to me because I don't feel like it's talked about as much as some other mysteries, but it's still very intriguing. And that is the possible connection between Diancie and the Anastasia City Sundial from Pokemon X and Y. The potential connection between these two emerges once you compare the two side by side, as they have a striking resemblance to one another with their pink gemstones, but it doesn't stop there. The Sundial is also used as a way to upgrade your Mega Ring in X and Y, and will allow you to find more Megastones in the post-game. This is interesting as it relates to Diancie because, at least currently before Pokemon Legends ZA drops, Diancie is the only Kalos Pokemon capable of Mega Evolving. Anastasia City as a whole is also extremely heavy on this mysterious lore type of stuff, as the entire city is basically littered with hints towards Pokemon Sun and Moon, with the Sundial itself even contributing to that too. So suffice it to say that this is a very lore-centric location in Kalos, and the Sundial is definitely a big deal. However, as a mythical Pokemon, Diancie doesn't really have anything going for it in the lore department that can connect it to the Sundial or anything else, as it is only ever gifted to you and it sadly doesn't have any other level of importance or significance in the games whatsoever. So what is the deal here? Why does the Sundial have such a close resemblance to Diancie? Why do both have such a distinct connection to Mega Evolution, and yet no explanation for this is offered in-game? Well, if I were to venture a guess, I would have to say personally that the connection between the two does seem to lie in Mega Evolution, since the Sundial has the capability of enhancing a Mega Ring, and Diancie, as I said, also has a Mega Evolution itself, and it's unique because it's currently the only Kalos Pokemon that can Mega Evolve, with Kalos being the home of Mega Evolution itself. Additionally, Diancie is also sort of an enhancement itself, as its existence, as the Pokédex tells us, is the result of a sudden mutation of a Carbink. This both sheds some light on this situation, as well as brings up some more questions, because at first I would say that maybe their stones are simply both infused with Mega Evolution energy, or that their stones come from the same source. But if that were the case, then what exactly was Diancie's sudden mutation from a Carbink? The evidence that we have here kinda makes it feel like it's tied to Mega Evolution, but then how does Diancie Mega Evolve again into Mega Diancie if its sudden mutation from a Carbink was effectively a Mega Evolution itself? Is it possible that Diancie can basically Mega Evolve twice, since it apparently seems to almost be like a living Megastone itself? But then you gotta ask yourself, if that is the case, why did this only happen to one Carbink, and why is Diancie classified as an entirely different Pokemon instead of some sort of Mega Evolution? The tie between this Sundial and this Pokemon seems to be very strong, and also, as you can see, very mysterious. And maybe it is the Sundial itself that can explain these things about Diancie. With Legends ZA coming up as well, I would love for the game to offer some answers here, since if it's anything like Legends Arceus and its mythical Pokemon, there is a decent chance that there could be some kind of side quest in the game that involves allowing us to catch Diancie and also learn a little more about it. So hopefully the game can finally provide us with a little more Diancie lore, and hopefully shed some light on the possible connection between it and the Sundial. And speaking of Legends ZA, when it comes out, you're gonna need a good controller to play it with. And today's sponsor, Maxie, has got you covered with their Master P1 wireless controller. This is an extremely versatile controller that can fulfill all your gaming needs, as it's not only compatible with Nintendo Switch, but also PC and even iOS and Android. So it's kind of like buying 4 controllers in one. It also feels great in your hands, it's got a nice, high-quality look and feel to it, its trigger buttons in particular feel really nice, which of course is always a big deal, and then it's even got some nice bells and whistles to help sweeten the pot, like this super cool looking RGB lighting, a built-in volume control and mute button, and even programmable back buttons. It also comes with all of the charging cords and everything else you'll need to hook up and play right away, and you can even grab one on a deal right now with Nixie's Black Friday sale. You can follow the link in the description to check that out and grab yours today, so give it a look if you would like, and thanks so much to Nixie for supporting the channel. Following in the footsteps of Pokémon X and Y, Pokémon Scarlet and Violet has also left us with a mystery of its own of a similar sort of variety, and that is Glimmora and its tie to Area Zero. Basically, Area Zero is a location in Scarlet and Violet that is the source of all the big plot-based stuff that goes on in the games. It's where the Paradox Pokemon can be found, it's where all the Terastal energy comes from, and that is because it's also home to Terapagos. Where it gets mysterious, though, is that Glimmora is seemingly tied up in the middle of all this stuff. As a Pokemon, Glimmora is not really supposed to be anything special. It's not a Paradox Pokemon, it's not a Legendary, it's not a Pseudo-Legendary, it's just a regular standard Pokemon, and yet it seems to be tied up and involved with all of the most important aspects of the Paldea region. First, despite not being any of the aforementioned kinds of Pokemon, the only place that you can find Glimmora in the wild is in Area Zero, which is a status that otherwise is pretty much exclusively reserved by Paradox Pokemon and the box legendaries of the games. Glimmora would also later be able to be encountered, however, at the Crystal Pool in the Scarlet and Violet DLC in Kitakami. But this place is also distinctly tied to Area Zero due to the identical crystals that reside here, as well as the presence of the same Terastal energy. And this is where another interesting thing about Glimmora comes in. This Pokemon has also been stated to have some kind of connection to the Terastal phenomenon, as its Dex entry mentions a resemblance between its petals and the Terrajewels. This is obviously significant since the Terastal phenomenon is the central mechanic of these games, but it's even more significant because the Terastal phenomenon originates from Terapagos. So a distinct connection to Terastalization implies that Glimmora has some kind of connection to Terapagos as well, and this is an idea that the games don't remotely attempt to explain, despite further implying that this is the case because Glimmora is able to be found in the Area Zero underdepths where Terapagos is also found. So what is the connection between Terapagos and Glimmora? Why is Glimmora seemingly so important even though no explanation is given for this? Well, oddly enough, the best explanation that I personally can give is basically the same thing that I offered for the Diancie situation, and that is that Glimmora is simply a living Terrajewel. After all, it is known as the Ore Pokemon, and its body is also described as crystalline. So even though this is officially a mystery, that does kind of feel like it would be as good of an explanation as any. What is really weird, though, is how perfectly this seems to connect to the Diancie situation that I mentioned earlier, because like I said, the possible explanations for these two are basically the same, and as it turns out, Carbink can also be found in the Area Zero Underdepths alongside Glimmora, and outside of the special Terra encounters that you get there during the DLC, these are the only wild Pokemon, along with Glimmora's pre-evolution Glimmet, that can be found here. So weirdly, these two are mysteries in and of themselves, but then it kind of feels like they also come together to create a new mystery of their own. Like, what is going on with these Pokemon? Why do they overlap like this? Why do they have so many mysteries to be had about them despite being regular standard Pokemon? This also feels all the more mysterious considering that a new Kalos game is also on the horizon with Legend ZA, where Carbink and Diancie are going to be brought back to the forefront once again in a Generation 9 game that could, for all we know, feature some of these Gen 9 plotlines. So it is almost like all of this is happening with that in mind. So, to say the least, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in Legend ZA, and whether it will end up providing any answers to these questions. And speaking of the Legends games, it seems like they are doing a pretty good job at providing mysterious content, because our next mystery is the curious case of Archie and Maxie's ancestors appearing in Pokemon Legends Arceus. As we know, Archie and Maxie are the leaders of Team Magma and Team Aqua in the Hoenn games, but inexplicably, their ancestors show up in the form of portraits in Pokemon Legends Arceus, which is a Sinnoh-based title, which is also set in the past. And what's more, it's implied that they were the original leaders or possibly even the founders of the Diamond and Pearl clans. So naturally, as a scenario that absolutely no one saw coming going into this game, the question is, what's the deal here? Why are ancestors of Archie and Maxie leading groups that are dedicated to Dialga and Palkia? Why are they in Sinnoh? And why Archie and Maxie out of all people? This one is a head-scratcher for sure, but thankfully there are also some details that we can infer pretty well. We know, for instance, that the Diamond and Pearl clans actually come to Sinnoh from afar and they're not originally from there, so one thing that the Archie and Maxie portraits can tell us is that these groups likely came to Sinnoh from Hoenn. Additionally, it can also be inferred as to why they might have come to Sinnoh, as given that the Snow Point Temple is located right outside of the Pearl settlement, and it is home to Regigigas, who is the leader of Hoenn's Regi Trio, it's possible that the Diamond and Pearl clans brought Regigigas to Sinnoh after sealing away the Regis in Hoenn, in order to also seal Regigigas away, and to do it as far away as possible from the Regi Trio. While the game itself does not offer any of this as an actual explanation, that does feel like a pretty solid explanation to me. So where exactly is the mystery here? Well, as I mentioned before, it felt pretty odd at the time that it was Archie and Maxie, out of all people, who were featured here filling this role. So why them? Even if they did travel from Hoenn to Sinnoh, it still feels a little out of place seeing them in this Sinnoh-based game. So why would they be given this kind of role? Why not just give it to some other character? Is it just because the Diamond and Pearl clans are at odds with each other, which Archie and Maxie are also known to do? Well, maybe, I could see that, but there could also be other explanations too. Like, for instance, Mega Evolution. It's somewhat interesting that Archie and Maxie's ancestors are featured in this game when their characters also feature in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, games which are basically one entire half of the Mega Evolution plotline of Generation 6. This also becomes even more interesting due to the presence of Mega Evolution related data that sits within the data of Pokemon Legends Arceus, and also that the next upcoming Legends game, Pokemon Legends ZA, is going to feature Mega Evolution as a central mechanic. Especially from the data point of view, it seems like Legends Arceus could have possibly been accounting for Legends ZA in some sort of way when it was being developed, and that is the reason why the Mega Evolution data is there in the first place. And since it's also pretty reasonable to assume that the Oraz side of the Mega Evolution arc is going to have some kind of role to play in the plot and lore of Legends ZA, and then it's also reasonable to assume, in addition to that both Legends games could potentially have some kind of connections to each other, it makes you wonder whether this odd and mysterious part of Legends Arceus is actually yet to be fully unfurled, and whether Mega Evolution is the final piece to the puzzle that is going to sort all of this out. When you think about it, all of these connections also kind of create a mystery of their own even, as it's currently unknown at this time what is in store for us with Legends ZA, and whether all of these seemingly strong connections are going to actually be utilized in any way at all, or whether all of this will just go left unexplained. In fact, the only thing that's currently not a mystery is the fact that it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this pans out once Legends ZA starts to begin its marketing push and reveals more information about itself, and then eventually comes out in 2025. So this next little stretch of time that we're about to enter into is definitely going to be very interesting, to say the least. Now that all of my thoughts are out there though, I would love to hear yours, so be sure to let me know all of your ideas on this in the comments, and if you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more as well. I will see you all soon with more content, and until then, as always, thanks so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and I will smell you guys later.